and emotional support times of. I would like to start with a couple of housekeeping announcements. As you have just heard, this meeting is being recorded. This means that if you don't want your face to appear, please turn your camera off. Also, I would like to ask you from now on to mute yourselves. Otherwise, the people organizing this meeting are gonna mute you just to avoid sound interference. And finally, I do want to encourage though to keep your cameras on if you want, because this is meant to be an informal conversation that it's as lively as possible in what virtual formats permit. And as much as you want to see your students whenever you are teaching them in a virtual format, for us, those that are going to be speaking today, we also want to see the faces of all of you. So if you can, if you want, please keep your cameras on as well. Now, as I said, this meeting is going to focus on social and emotional support. We've all been emotionally touched this last year, but the youngest ones in our societies are those that have been hit the hardest. In the latest surveys that we have collected, we see that young adults are from 30 to 90% more likely to experience or to report anxiety and depression. And this is just a start of the looming problem that our systems are going to be facing in the coming months and years. When the schools shut down last year, we realized more than ever the role that education plays the role that education plays. And we realize that it's not just about knowledge and hard skills. We realize that classrooms are amazing spaces where children, where students learn the key skills to socialize, to become citizens, but also to handle their emotions in that very complicated process of growing up. And the crisis that we have undergone, which was unprecedented in many countries, has emphasized even more the role of social and emotional skills and of a social and emotional education. Yet those are spaces that provide children with a safe space to grow and develop suddenly disappear. And many teachers, all teachers, had to come up with the strategies to continue to support their students and to help them in handling these very challenging circumstances that they were going on, in making sense of what was happening, in coping with those dramatic challenges that all of a sudden we all experienced. So the OECD, together with UNESCO and the International Teacher Task Force, decided to call for teacher contributions, to hear directly from teachers on all the creative and innovative ways that they had found to provide support to their students in these challenging times. And what we are going to be discussing today is the result of all these contributions that we received. We received more than 100 contributions, and it was very hard to pick those that we found interesting to discuss here with all of you. And I'm sure that in the audience, we also have many other teachers that contributed to this call. And whilst we're going to be focusing on some innovations during this hour that we have ahead, we do want this conversation to be as lively as possible. And we do want to encourage you to ask questions to your peers in the chat, to share your insights and your experience in the chat. This is a space for you all to share and exchange on providing social and emotional support to teachers. And as I said, we are going to focus on three of the innovations received. And we have here with us Nana Gulic from Croatia, who has been working with the students in primary schools. We also have Marina Wood from Hong Kong, China, who's been working at the community level and schools level to support the students. We have Daniel Antonio from Colombia, who's been teaching, who's found very creative ways to continue to teach their students music education. We also have with us Stuart McAlpine, who served as a reviewer, who reviewed all the contributions received in order to have an external view on all these inputs that we receive from teachers. So we're going to be hearing from Stuart McAlpine from the LEGO Foundation as an expert today. And as I said, the goal is not just to hear from all these innovators, but also to hear from you all from the chat. So we also have Lawrence Holdsworth, who's going to be taking the pulse of the chat and taking some questions back for our panelists. And we will be having some polls to ask you about some key questions related to social and emotional support. I'm Anna Pons. I'm the project lead of the Global Teaching Insights Initiative at the OECD, and it's a pleasure to be here today in this very important subject. I would like to start by defining what do we refer by when we talk about social and emotional support. We not only refer to the learning environment, a learning environment that is respectful, that it's warm, that helps students and builds that community sense that helps everyone grow. We also refer to helping students develop the abilities and the skills that are key in the 21st century. Skills like resilience, or the capacity to face uncertainty or to take risk, and many others, to work together, and etc. And these skills, as I was saying, have been shown more important than ever in this crisis that we are still going through. Teachers in many countries are referred as the lifeline for students. We know that students have undergone very, very, very complicated times, and teachers have gone extra and extra and extra efforts to support them. And they have done so in amazing creative ways. So I would like to start by asking you all, what is the greatest challenge that you have encountered in teaching, in continuing to provide support to your students? You see here a poll, and I would like you to respond to this poll by saying, what is the greatest challenge in providing students with social and emotional support? Let's stop for 30 seconds so that you can all read the responses and reply. Okay, now I'm seeing the results, and I see that the biggest challenge has been encouraging students to talk about their emotions, trying to, and the second most voted one is student well-being, which is generally the summary of the situation that they were facing, right? So it's interesting that you've all mentioned that one of the greatest challenges was encouraging students to talk about their emotions, because that's exactly what Nana, who is going to be our first speaker, what she has been working on. But before turning to Nana, I do want to apologize because I forgot about Noemi Vaisa, who is joining us from Indonesia and who's going to be speaking right after Nana. Thank you, Noemi, for joining us as well. So Nana, I would like to start with you. You have developed materials, cards, roulettes, games to help students label their emotions and share their emotions so that they could learn coping skills to address them. Some of them might have gone through particularly hard struggles. They might have lost their loved ones, their grandparents or their parents, or they might see their parents struggling financially. How did these materials, could you give us practical examples of how these materials that you developed and that we're going to be sharing in the chat have helped in such difficult conversations, and how you have been able to encourage peer support? I'm sure that any particular tips, as well as how to get students that are perhaps a bit more shy or reserved to express the emotions, can be particularly interesting for the rest of participants. So Nana, over to you.
Great. Hi, Anna. Thank you for your great questions. I would first like to say I'm really honored to be a part of this conversation and Global Teaching Insights Initiative in general. As someone who works with teachers on a daily basis, I'm really amazed by the strength and resilience of teachers in my school, elementary school, Milan Brazovic in Kasta, but also beyond. And I'm really glad to be a part of the project that showcases and celebrates their innovations. Now, to answer your question about students who are having difficult time about opening up about their feelings, there really isn't an easy answer about this question, but I think some students find online environment easier to navigate and therefore function better in online environments. So when we do SEED workshops and we do online workshops for parents and for children, some join specifically because they don't find online environment threatening, and then they can choose the level of engagement that they want in the workshop that they participate, where when it's in person, they might feel a way that someone's going to call on them or something like this. So I think it's just about, being aware that different students are comfortable with different methods of communicating, and online for some students can be useful. The other thing about SEED is that these are workshops where students participate with their parents, and it is a little bit of a hybrid of a group therapy and an individual therapy. And I think that can also be useful for students where, in some ways they spend time with their friends and they enjoy peer interactions and they feel connected with the community, because for some of them, they haven't seen their friends in a while. But on the other hand, there's also this piece of activities that they do with their parents. So they shut off their mics and they have specific questions and specific topics that they need to talk with their parents. For example, I would say, remember so we would spin the wheel, and on the wheel, there would be many uncomfortable feelings. And then when the wheel stops on a specific feeling, for example, sadness, then they would shut off their mics and they would talk to their parents about a time that they felt sad, and then their parents would talk about the time that they felt sad. So in a way, it's a hybrid where some of it is private and they get to really do one-on-one conversation with their parents, and some of it's more, enjoyable and social. So I think mixing those two strategies can be useful. And also, parents say sometimes they have a hard time initiating these discussions with their children, and then they discover a lot in these individual discussions from their children. But also children see from their parents that parents also feel sad and angry or stressed. But also, with that being said, I think online environment is not for everybody. So I think for some children who are usually chatting in classrooms find it really difficult to communicate online. So I think it's also good for the resources that we do in SEED and we do online to share with other teachers. And I think that's what's COVID done for us in our community, is that people have really started to share as much as they possibly can with each other. So I also share my activities, but also it's not just me. Many teachers in my school share with each other, and a lot of times particularly about social and emotional activities, because they find it to be such a key theme in the classrooms with the students. And lastly, I think, and this would just be continuing on this communication piece, I think Fernando from Brazil, he did a video for Global Teaching Insights also, and he talked about the importance of collaboration. So, I think it's really important for our students to know that they're not alone. And I think in those activities, I would do a poll and I would say, who in this room has felt sad, angry, anxious, stressed? And then the kids would answer those questions, and then you would see 100%. Everybody has felt that. And a lot of times when kids are feeling those feelings, they feel that, you know, oh, there's something wrong with them because they're feeling it. They should be embarrassed about it. They have nobody to talk about. There's something wrong with them. But in reality, when in a poll, they see 100% of participants felt these feelings, then, oh, okay, so I'm not alone in this situation. We also, but I think what is also important is that it's not only the students who have to feel that they're not alone. We as teachers also need to feel that we're not alone. And I think this is my biggest advice for everybody, is to just get connected and work together. So for example, in Croatia, we have a lot of Facebook communities, one particular one with 11,000 teachers, and 3 teachers are leading it. There's Sandra Vuk, Lydia Cvetko, and Angelina Jakopin. There are 3 teachers leading a community of 11,000 teachers. Or, you know, we collaborated with Dr. Christine Boyko. She's here today from Canadian Mohawk College, and her students created stories for our students. And so our students are now reading Canadian stories about confidence, mindfulness, strength-based approaches. So the kids also get a sense of community, but we get a sense of community because we're working together and we're helping each other with materials. We also have a collaboration with Center for Innovation in Education, and they provide talks where we talk about pedagogy on a global level. Or a local app developers, they're called Heroes Nearby, and they offer to build us a website. And on this website, we're gonna have students create their own materials to share with each other. So in a way, students are helping each other, but they're also developing their own skills by developing materials for others. So I think in conclusion, I would say the 3 most important things about helping shy students would be, first, to try to reach them from as many angles, online, in class, through parents, through community programs. And also for teachers, you know, you can always add a little social emotional learning activity in your class. It can be a 5-minute check-in at the end or at the beginning. It could be a spin the wheel activity. You can check out some of the stuff that's in my package. You can just add 5 minutes to your class and add cell component to it. My second advice is to find fun and engaging ways to normalize their feelings. They learn through experience. They learn through talking to each other and seeing other students' reactions. And the third one is to create a supportive community so that they know that they're not alone, and also to create a supportive community for yourself. Okay, I hope I didn't go too much over time.
Thank you very much, Nana. I do want to build on what you said by emphasizing that we've got the space right here, right now, to share, to not to be alone, and to exchange with other peers. So please, I do encourage everyone to use the chat. And if you have any further elements that you would add to the fantastic list that Nana shared on things that need to be considered that can help, please add them in the chat. If you have questions for Nana or questions for the other peers, also add them in the chat. If you also have resources to share, use the chat. It's a space that it's for you. Make use of it. Thank you. And now I would like to turn to Noemi Baisel. We are moving to Indonesia because Noemi developed a project with the students to actually write a newspaper on global issues. Because when we talk about social and emotional skills, these skills are not just skills that can help us face disruptions, face the challenge of the present. These are also skills that are needed in building the world ahead, in making sense of key challenges, and in engaging students in building the capacity to work on these challenges. Noemi, in developing this newspaper, I'm sure that you've managed to make your students much more knowledgeable about these global issues. But can you tell us whether they actually feel empowered? How did you manage to create that sense of empowerment and to instill empowerment as opposed to cynicism or disempowerment, which are also things that can happen as the students become more knowledgeable of the problems, right? We can either engage them in trying to solve them, or they may feel that these are too big or too complex for them to solve. Noemi, over to you. Tell us a bit more about your initiative and how can we empower students
Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone. Mabuhay from the Philippines. Months ago, I did a survey on the impact of Pigeon, our online newspaper. Pigeon is an online publication that I initiated together with my students to promote global citizenship education and sustainable development goals. So the results of that particular survey revealed that the students themselves feel empowered because they are given the platform to voice out their opinions on current social issues. Our online publication became a gateway for them to have that choice and voice, which make them feel empowered because they can make decisions on their own, what to write, and how to affect change to our readers through their articles. As to falling into the trap of cynicism and disempowerment, this is something that I have to keep in check at all times, since Pigeon allowed students to introspect on the many aspects of society and to respond to these real life situations through their articles. We have established from the very start of Pigeon the principle of check and balance in our organization. Through this, the students are able to share their insights, opinions, and achieve a common goal through collaboration. I, together with the editors, try to serve as role models to the younger ones through our words and actions to remain true, accurate, and fair in bringing forth a journalism of humanity. Everyone knows that we are all accountable for what we write and what we publish in Pigeon. So we work as a team to ensure that our articles do not only show the ills of society that need more exposure to the limelight, but also feature stories of people from all walks of life who can be a source of inspiration and encouragement, especially during these trying times.
Thank you very much, Noemi, for sharing this excellent initiative that you've conducted with your students. And now I would like to take again the pulse of our participants, because when we talk about social and emotional skills, we're referring to several skills, right? And we would like to hear from you what social and emotional skills have proven most important in these challenging times, and how have you nurtured them in a distance environment. So I would like to encourage our participants to write their comments in the chat and to share them with all of us. Let me repeat the question. The question is, what social and emotional skills have proven most important in these challenging times of the pandemic, and how have you managed to nurture them in a distance environment? So please do share your insights in the chat. Let's pause for 30 seconds, and then I would like to ask Lawrence to come in and tell us a bit about what we are seeing in the chat. Lawrence, I already see some comments. Would you like to come in and start?
Yeah, absolutely. I've had the lucky role of getting to track the chat during the call so far, and it's fantastic seeing how global the conversation is. We have people from all different time zones and all different places. So thank you to everybody who has been coming in to join the conversation and making it lively in the chat so far. We're seeing quite a few of the same themes coming up that Nana mentioned earlier about trying to sort of give voice to some of the more difficult feelings that students are encountering and trying to promote empathy. Also, some interesting comments coming through on promoting creativity as well, and trying to encourage, I guess, expression through a different way as well. Lots on being self-aware and stress management, trying to cope with these particularly testing and challenging times. We've also had a couple of questions that have been coming through that perhaps some of the participants might like to keep in mind. In particular, we had one that really stood out to me from Cheryl, who was asking how with the most hard to reach students, those that have at times almost disappeared from schooling and only appearing here and there, how can we provide social emotional support for them when they are not always present or not always there? And also this idea of trying to be aware of the unique situation of each family. The fact that in a classroom, I think it was Tony Breslin said, in a classroom, no student and no family has had the same experience, and how important parents are there. That was another theme that seems to have been picked up by the audience so far. And indeed, it might be a good link with, I think we have Daniel Antonio, who is going to talk to us a little bit more about his work with parents.
That's what I was exactly thinking, that our next speaker, thank you very much, Lawrence, for taking the pose of the chat. Our next speaker, Daniel Antonio from Colombia. Daniel, if you would like to come in, you've been providing social and emotional support to not just your students, but also the families through your music classes. And we can very well imagine the great potential emotional impact that these classes have had on the students and in the families, the opportunity for them to write their own songs to cope with the pandemic, and the opportunity to strengthen family relationships, to find a moment of shared expression within the family. So we can imagine that this has been very impactful and well received, as you explained in your video, but we would like to hear a bit more about exactly what some people were asking in the chat. How can we actually reach those students that are harder to reach? What have you done, Daniel Antonio, how have you gotten out of your way to really reach out and make sure that those students that are harder to reach, harder to engage, also develop these songs with their families? And some might have a little, in some cases might be because parents are working long hours and might have little time to spend with their children, or there might be complicated relationships or many other circumstances that make it hard to engage. So tell us a bit more about these different circumstances that you have encountered and the ways that you found to actively engage them. Daniel Antonio, over to you.
Hello. Hello, everyone. And I would like to thank the invitation to the organization institution of the forum. The pandemic pushed families to modify their times at home. This was important because it brought a new challenge, both for families and schools. Curfew for a long time makes stays together at home very hard. Therefore, we must ask ourselves, how can we return this use or difficulty on opportunity to learn and build knowledge involving family parents? I understood that music is an activity that is liked by youngers and adults, and I conclude if we propose curricular activities where students solve musical activities together with their parents, I would be very favorable not just to the kids' learning process, but the improved family coexist. For sure, building musical instruments out the house, hall, events and co-work. You start creating and composing songs. Creating and composing songs was very fun to the students and their families. They communicate that satisfaction, their families bond in the activities and the communication improve. That's why parents that for work issues didn't have enough time during weekdays dedicate the weekend to do the gates and homework with their children. Even now, not all parents took part with the same enthusiasm. The great majority, as men, engaged it with pleasure, enjoy having fun in family, and this was what they liked the most, because according to their own words, they had never done this kind of activities before. And with the weeks passing by, they wanted more of it. The dynamic purpose is defined by four main steps all performed in family. First, reflection on the current situation and reading about it. Second, creation of musical instruments. Third, creation of lyrics for the songs. Fourth, performance and recording of the songs. I believe that it was right to have proposed these joint activities because besides musical elements, we accomplished to improve the social, emotional states of families. Since part of the activities consisted of performing analysis and family reflection on the pandemic situation in their context, in their city, and the world. They was useful to take conscience of the problem facing humanity. This was the base of the song the parents and their families created. Understanding and propose the solution to the problem of life from the perspective of music in a creative way in family has been a great success for education and the students. Besides, as a music teacher, I feel very happy to have been able to inspire the students and their families. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Daniel Antonio. And I do encourage everyone to look at the video that Daniel Antonio prepared that you can also find here in the chat, because indeed it's very inspiring all the ways that you found for students to create instruments at home and to write those songs that would help them reflect and process on all the emotions, on all the roller coaster of emotions that they were going through in these challenging times. And we've already heard some further ideas from teachers in the chat, and I would actively encourage you all to share what ways have you found to work with parents and caregivers and communities in these challenging times. So if you could write in the chat, again, as we did last time, what are the new ways that you have found to work with parents and caregivers and with the community to provide social and emotional support. And then I would like to ask Lawrence to come in again and help us read some of the responses. Thank you, Daniel Antonio.
Thank you for you. Presley.
You're muted still.
For families and the questions, but parents and students have.
He's muted.
Yeah. Lawrence, would you like to start taking the polls of the ideas that we have received?
Yeah,
I see here constant
happily.
communication. That's a classic and a tremendously important one, right? Teresita, and how have you managed to do this constant communication? If you can tell us a bit more about it in the chat, that will be, I'm sure, appreciated by the rest of participants. Lawrence, over to you.
Yeah, we're seeing lots of stuff about trying to communicate at the local level through small sort of group Zoom meetings with parents, but then also some interesting ones that are going across communities and at a much bigger scale. Also, some people have raised some interesting ways of trying to offer support and connection at distance when people don't have an easy way to connect to the internet and to other people. So using the radio has come up, and sending out some packages that are just normal, basic needs and basic services there. And one particular thing that has come up that I think has been really interesting is the idea that social emotional needs are changing and evolving. And as the situation around the world shifts and as the prospect of actually going back to school becomes a reality for many people, the social emotional needs are no longer quite the same as what they were perhaps before, but still extremely serious, and it can still be a really testing and challenging time for young people that teachers need to think about.
Thank you very much, Lawrence. Maybe we keep this question as well for our panelists at the end of the conversation, if we have time left, because it's indeed a very good one. But now I would like to turn to the expert, Stuart McAlpine, who has joined us today. And let me say that we have, as part of this initiative, we have invited different organizations that are part of the teacher task force to comment on all the contributions that we have received. For those on social and emotional support, we have counted with the support of the Lego Foundation and Save the Children UK. And we are very happy to have today Stuart McAlpine, who is the Senior Program Specialist at the Lego Foundation. Stuart, I remember reading your comment that you said that naming emotions can be very powerful. And I would like to ask you, from your experience, once the students are able to name, to express, to know how they feel, what should teachers do? Should teachers help them work towards the acceptance of those emotions, or should teachers help them develop a positive outlook no matter what has happened to them or what they feel? And perhaps even one step further, what is the capacity or what is the skill to self-manage our own emotions means in practice? Can you tell us a bit more about this?
Thank you. I'm very happy to share a perspective and just say thank you very much for sharing the amazing practice that I saw and all the videos and all the other things that have been shared. It was a real privilege to be asked. And the Lego Foundation, this is something that's really important to us, and we think learning through play helps, but it was a real privilege to be asked. So the question first, and so focusing on Nana's contribution that I really enjoyed alongside all the others, I thought it was brilliant. Your question is about naming emotions, and before jumping on from there and saying, you know, should you accept or should you, what happens next? I also want to talk about why that's so important. And I think Nana's touched upon it, and so's everyone else. So in the poll, there was a big section on, you know, 33% said getting students to talk about their emotions is a challenge. And it is if you don't have a vocabulary. And, you know, we all can suffer from that, of being able to name those emotions. And I think for self, the reason why that's important is almost like mindfulness. If you can experience yourself as experiencing emotion rather than just having to react to it. And Nana mentioned some of those emotions about anger or anxiety or apathy. If you can say, oh, I'm feeling this and it won't last, that in itself puts you in a really powerful state to begin to ask, and what are some of the things I can do that might help me with this or through this? And teachers can help their learners with that. I think as a group, being able to say, as Nana said, do a poll and say, you know, how are we feeling? What are those emotions? And to normalize that offers support in itself. And I think the magic happens when children are able to do that for each other and notice, oh, you know, Jake is feeling sad. And I know that when he feels sad, some of the things that help are this, and some of the things that don't help him are this. So today I'm not going to ask him that, but I'm just going to share my biscuit if you're in person, or I'm going to send him a message on the chat. And so I think the process of naming, do you see in play therapy, you see in coaching, you see in non-violent communication, in itself is a tremendously powerful strategy that I think Nana's supporting. The kind of what happens next, should you accept or say develop a positive outlook? I say absolutely accept. The acceptance is the power, that when it's normalized and we accept that we all feel sad sometimes, like Nana was talking about with parents, normalizing that is the power. And telling someone you feel sad and how are you going to be happy is actually making them feel guilty and bad for feeling sad and adding to their woes rather than helping them. But I think that does allow you to open up a conversation, though, about what are some of the things that you know support you through this sadness that you know will end. You don't know how long it will go on for, but you know it will end at some point, which itself builds resilience. What are some protective things that you can do? Who do you like reaching out to? What makes you feel better? And it may be as simple as, I like listening to music, or I like talking to my friends, or I like time to play a game, or I like, but having that self-awareness in itself is the thing that I think builds power. And lots of the strategies I'm sure you will find on Nana's site and sort of exploring with each other and sharing, they're often very personal. And I suppose the important thing is less to have a strategy up your sleeve. It's probably more to be able to ask someone what kinds of things help. And they're not a cure for a disease, they're just a protective factor. So for example, doing gratitude notes about things you're appreciative and happy for over time can build resilience. But it's not handing them out as a prescription because someone says they're feeling sad. It's more a matter of building habits that are protective or supportive of learners. So, and I think that's what emotional self-management means, which is the last bit of the question of what does it mean to self-manage? I think it is exactly the process that Nana and you all, from what the comments are suggesting, are supporting, which is if you can name what you're feeling and get a little bit of distance from it to recognize what's happening as a group, as an individual in your peer group, it opens up the space for you to begin to have conversations about the kinds of things that might help. And I think that I can see all the way through the chat and through the poll and through Nana's work and the other videos I saw. So that would be my perspective, and it was a privilege to be asked, and I'm very much enjoying being on the conversation.
Thank you very much, Stuart, for your contribution. Now I would like to turn from Marina Wood, because Marina, you have also developed affirmation cards, which are kind of similar to what Nana did, trying to help students express and discuss about their emotions, but you are also a big contributor to the local education community in Hong Kong, China. And I would like now to take kind of a broader perspective, moving from the individual students and the classrooms and the schools and parents, and try to think about the community. We are at a time where we feel scared of each other, where we take greater distances with those strangers, even if we are part of the same community. What type of approaches could we consider to bring people closer and support each other in the school and in the community? What can we do to actually build this social and emotional, bigger supportive environment? Marina?
Thank you, Anna. Thank you for inviting me to join today's event to share my creation. And thank you to OECD and UNESCO for creating such insightful platform, the Global Teaching Insight, which I keep learning from different teachers and different practitioners on the platform, and get very useful insights and inspirations throughout. So actually, we have been practicing social distancing since the outbreak of COVID-19. But to me, social distancing doesn't mean emotional distancing. Living in Hong Kong, we went through the SARS outbreak in 2003, and now we are facing the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. So both experiences have actually taught me the importance of rebuilding resilience and the power of positivity. As always, my 7-year-old daughter is my inspiration, actually. Despite the pandemic situation, she's always so positive, and her positivity has become my source of positive energy. So when developing the affirmation cards, I was actually inspired by growth mindset. As you can see from those cards, which I'm sure you can actually download it from the link in the chat box later, the messages are very very simple, such as, I'm not sure whether I can, you can see, because of the cards, never mind, we can also always see it online later. So the messages are very simple, like, I love my family, we are all in this together, it's okay to change because we are in the constant change in times of COVID. And then the other simple messages like the bad times won't last forever, or spread love, not hate, and so on. So the idea of this affirmation card is that to encourage the students to read out the messages out loud or by sending these affirmation cards to someone they love, helping them to stay positive and practice more kindness and having gratitude towards each other and towards themselves, actually. And it will be a great way to feel closer rather than feeling apart and build resilience among them. So I worked with the British artists and designing these affirmation cards with colorful cartoons and positive messages in both English and Chinese, and to promote mental well-being of children. And over the past year, I've also shared these usage of the affirmation cards through different webinars held by youth-related NGOs, education institutions, and hear feedbacks from teachers mainly in Hong Kong, in China, or even in Singapore, to see how they could make use of these cards to encourage children to share their feelings during tough times. And with the help of technology, teachers and parents from around the world could actually download these affirmation cards for free and use them during lockdown at home, and especially when schools are closed and they have to continue online learning. Apart from these affirmation cards, I've also published an ebook to encourage communication between parents and their children during lockdown, so that they could actually share the emotions with the parents. So this is my creation so far. Thank you, Anna.
Thank you very much, Marina, for sharing your creation, your initiative. And again, you can all find it here in the chat or in the globalteachinginsights.org site. And now I would like to hear more again from you all, from all participants through another poll. And let me also say that after the poll, we'll have time for 1 or 2 questions from you. So if you all have questions for our panelists, also write them in the chat. Now, the question that is coming in the poll is, based on your experience, what social and emotional skills are going to become increasingly important in the future? And we are asking you to please select the 2 most important social and emotional skills for the future. What do you think? Please make your choices, and we will see in a moment what are they. Okay. Okay, so here we have the results. We see as the most important skill for the future, 44% of you have chosen teamwork and collaboration. I don't know whether you've been influenced by Marina and the importance of communities, but that seems to be the most important skill for the future. The second one, resilience. No, sorry, I'm misreading. The second one is self-reflection and self-management as a learner. And the third one, resilience. All the skills, I mean, we could all argue that all the skills are important, but it's great to see what are the skills that you consider most important. And if you have strategies on how to develop them, please also share them in the chat. We are also going to be looking at the chat to see whether there are 1 or 2 questions for our panelists. Lawrence, I don't know whether you have spotted 1 or 2 questions that might be particularly interesting for the panelists. Or otherwise, we could also linking on the most important skills for the future and how these the most important skills to nurture or develop have changed over the course of this last year. We could also ask them this. What do you think? What are you seeing?
Yeah, I think that sounds like a great idea. We're hearing lots of extra, like extremely important skills appearing here that people who are also trying to prioritize. So I think hearing from the participants on what skills they're trying to focus on, and perhaps what they're focusing on in the next 6 months, and then what they imagine beyond that focusing on. Is there a difference, or are they the same skills that they're prioritizing?
Perfect. So we have time for 2 interventions. I don't know who would like to call the shot. I don't know. Nana, Noemi, Marina, Stuart, Daniel Antonio, who would like to respond to the question? Otherwise, we can also read responses from others in the chat. Nana, would you like to contribute?
Sure.
I see you need to unmute yourself. Go ahead.
Yes, sure. I can go. I think Stuart's point really touched me about building resilience and how important we are as schools in doing that. And I think we're overwhelmed with everything that we need to do all at once with this changing environment. But I think if we keep at the forefront of what we do, that we're here as a huge protective factor that builds that resilience, then I think that's the most important right now, most important. And then the other thing that I wanted to say was just about, families that are, or students that are difficult to reach. And we have a similar situation, I think, regardless of what country you're in, where there are those several students that are at most risk, but are the most difficult to reach. And in my experience, what works the best is reaching out to the parents and telling them there's no judgment, just pure acceptance, because most of the time those families are struggling with more than what we could handle, and sometimes those kind of approaches lead them to open up, because when we push with authority, we close the doors. So I guess that was the other point I wanted to say. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Nana. And I'm afraid that we are reaching the end of this conversation. But as I said, we have received an amazing number of contributions. It was very hard to pick those that we would be discussing and presenting in this conversation. So I do encourage everyone to go on the site and see them and engage with them, because you can actually comment and share your own insights there. And Nana, I remember you encourage our audience to watch the contribution from Fernando from Brazil. I don't know whether Marina, Daniel Antonio, Noemi have also suggestions on other contributions to look into. Do you? Yeah, yes. Marina says yes. Go ahead, Marina.
Yes, I actually watched a video by a Japanese math teacher teaching a very difficult math called contract equations. And he's from an urban public school. And actually, his teaching method is different from the traditional teacher-directed learning, because what he's doing is trying to ask the students to get together and to normalize the difficulties, the challenges that they are facing, asking the students to talk about the problems, and then asking the peers to solve the problems together. So this is a very growth mindset mentality, right? Because it is to tell the students that it is normal that you have problems and challenges in your life, but don't worry, because we are all in this together, because you have peers, you have teachers, support that you can solve the problem together. So I really, what inspired me is his teaching method.
I think you're muted, Anna.
OECD. I think Miss Anna is muted.
Yes, so I was just saying, I don't know whether Daniel Antonio or Noemi, you also have contributions that particularly struck you and that you would like to share with the audience. Otherwise, we will close this webinar and remind you of what are the next upcoming conversations. Daniel Antonio?
Yes. Me, yes. Thank you. In conclusion, I believe the education system to change the paradigms where cognitive development is privileged and the emotional partner dimension is said. It is essential that teachers, school and education leaders today are paradigms and put ourselves in the task of researching and involving in these subjects. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Daniel Antonio. Noemi?
Yes. There's a need for a paradigm shift on education, and we have been trying to go to that direction for some time now. The focus should not just be in the cognitive development of the students, but on their holistic development, which encompasses physical and mental health, safety, civic engagement, social development. So our teaching has to evolve from teaching the what to teaching the how. We could teach our students what compassion is, but what is more important than teaching what compassion is for us to teach them how to be compassionate. We have to make them learn not just what is the meaning of empathy, but we have to teach them how to apply this and be empathic to the people around them. There are a lot of areas that we should stress and that we should teach to our students, and these are really needed these times. Self-awareness, empathy, social awareness, relationship skills, responsible decision making. These are also the same things that I try to teach my students in Pigeon.
Thank you very much, Noemi. Thank you very much, Nana, Marina, Daniel Antonio, Stuart, and also all of you that have joined us today and have shared your insights through the chat. Also, thank you very much for all those that have coordinated this meeting at UNESCO and the International Teacher Task Force. We welcome the feedback from you all on this campaign and this conversation. And we would like to encourage you to participate in the next conversation. I don't know whether we can put the slide on, which is going to take place next week. And also the final conversation, the forum that will take place on April 28th. We hope to see you in these events and to continue this conversation. Also, you will find in here our emails. Please feel free to share any feedback and suggestions that you might have. And again, this is a space for you, as it has been said today. Social and emotional skills are extremely important, and we can all benefit from not being alone and working with each other, collaborating, sharing resources. We hope that this space today has been useful, and we encourage you to continue this conversation in the site. Thank you very much, everyone, and have a good rest of the day. See you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you, everyone.